South America, Africa, Asia. No mention of Europe in Mr. Trump's list. And he uses the term poisoning the blood of our country, poisoning the blood of our country. If you were to open up a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, you would find the Nazi leader describing the mixing of non-Germans with Germans as poisoning. The Jew, Hitler wrote, quote, poisons the blood of others.
As NBC News points out, the term blood poisoning was used by Hitler in his manifesto Mein Kampf.
During a recent campaign stops in New Hampshire and Nevada, former President Donald Trump stoked fears about undocumented immigrants coming across the U.S.-Mexico border. Former President again repeating language that echoes white supremacists.
Trump is using the rhetoric of Hitler and Mussolini to make a point about people coming across the border illegally.
All right, guys, so we're going to be talking about a story that everyone's losing their mind over. And it's about what Donald Trump just finished saying at a rally a few days ago. And this is the clip that's going viral.
You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be. And then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we're going to build more.
Now, I think anybody with more than a couple brain cells can understand what Trump is actually talking about. He's talking about the border and all of the illegal immigrants that are coming over the border, and how there's just chaos now in a lot of these cities, whether it's Texas, Chicago, New York, Baltimore, all these places that all these migrants are now traveling to, Denver, et cetera, et cetera. Like, the list goes on and on. And again, he's not talking about legal immigrants. That's clear. And to me, this is a stance that Donald Trump really hasn't wavered on, seeing as back when he was originally running for president, that was his whole campaign, was building a wall, securing the border, giving the U.S. more of a defense against all the cartel and other people who are trying to cross over to the States illegally. Yet for some reason in 2023 and probably next year as well, everybody's lost their mind and don't really understand why this is so important. Now, that clip you saw in the end there with, I believe her name is Abby Phillip, who does state illegal immigrants. Again, she's not saying immigrants. She said illegal immigrants. Is questioning a representative of the Republican Party in New York about what Donald Trump said. And this is what she has to say.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Look, I'll start off by simply asking, is Trump right that immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country?
Well, I don't think that's what he was saying. When he said they are poisoning, I think he was talking about the Democratic policies. I think he was talking about the open border policy. And if you look at what our mayor here in New York City is saying, that this migrant crisis is destroying New York City, I think it's pretty much the same thing. What we're trying to say here is that we need to have secure borders. You know what's actually poisoning America is the amount of fentanyl that's coming over our open border. And so this is a really serious issue, and I think that that's what he's talking about, that the open borders are unsafe, that it's unsustainable, and it's bankrupting cities like ours, and we need to address it.
So you hear that, and she's making very clear points. There is fentanyl issues, there's a lot of drug issues. There's multiple reports talking about how all these migrants, or a lot of the migrants that are coming over, are participating in sex work, especially the women that are there. Because they can't work and they can't get visas, they're now moving into prostitution and selling their bodies for money. And I've heard of those reports coming out of Chicago. But obviously in New York, the mayor has come out and he's talked about how a lot of social and other programs that are going to have to be cut because they now need to focus all of their funds on this illegal migrant crisis that's coming across the border and into the sanctuary city that New York claims to be.
Major budget cuts could be coming to every New York City agency. Mayor Adams is requesting 5% cuts across the board in response to the asylum seeker crisis.
For the better part of a year now, I have been clear that these costs will impact every city service. The simple truth is that longtime New Yorkers and asylum seekers will feel these potential cuts, and they will hurt.
The mayor claims the cuts are in direct response to what he calls inaction from both federal and state lawmakers. The city says it has spent nearly $1.5 billion handling the migrant crisis since last spring.
Now, that small snippet was only from 3 months ago. They tried to push against it to say that 15% cuts is going to affect the people. But just a month ago, this video came out talking about this again.
To public safety, to the classroom. Mayor Adams says New Yorkers are set to really feel the price to the city of taking care of asylum seekers, and it's going to hurt. The mayor gave our political reporter Marsha Kramer a preview of the budget cuts he'll announce later on in the week.
School safety agents make sure weapons don't get inside schools and protect students from hate crimes and gang violence. But there's going to be far fewer of them now because the city has been forced to cancel a new class of 250 agents as it tightens its belt to pay for the tens of thousands of migrants who have arrived here seeking shelter. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Every single agency will see its budget shrink by 5% when the mayor unveils exactly what's on the chopping block this Thursday. There will be another 5% cut in January and possibly another 5% in May.
This is probably one of the most painful exercises I've gone through. And, you know, when we look at around police, what the numbers of our police officers are going to be, and how we've done so well in dropping crime in our city. When we look at the school safety agents, when we look at some of the other initiatives that we're doing, you know, it's going to be extremely painful for New Yorkers.
Sources tell CBS 2 that cuts to the NYPD will involve a cut in overtime and could force the city to put off hiring new cops to replenish the ranks. Sources tell CBS 2 there will also be other hiring cutbacks that will reduce the size of the labor force.
With the fiscal cliffs, with the office vacancies, which really those buildings contribute to our tax base, as well as the asylum seeker costs, the resources are not there. And every single agency is going to feel the impact of these cuts, and New Yorkers are going to feel it, top to bottom.
When community activists and elected officials protested the cuts 2 months ago, they said the expected 15% cuts will devastate city services, including a $2.1 billion cut to the education budget, $1.4 billion cut to the Department of Social Services, $800 million from homeless services, $300 million from the fire department, and $200 million from city hospitals.
This is extremely personally painful for this administration, these projects and these initiatives that we knew were going to improve the lives of New Yorkers.
So now you can see when Donald Trump says it's poisoning the country, you can see what he's talking about, where allowing all of these illegal immigrants to come over through that border, the southern border, is going to have a downstream effect that will affect everybody like poison does. It affects every system there is. And when I mean 1,000, just the other day when they were covering Greg Abbott and his new policy in Texas, they were saying that 12,000 people a day were coming across that border. And as the reporter's talking, you can see everybody right behind her waiting to get through.
A new Texas law could mean jail time for migrants crossing into the U.S. illegally.
Fox's Caroline Elliott joins us live from Eagle Pass, Texas tonight with more details on the new immigration law. Caroline.
Well, John, Christina, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed this immigration law at the same time we're seeing a new daily record at the southern border. CBP sources tell us that more than 12,000 migrants crossed into the U.S.-Mexico border illegally in just one day. And you can see some of these migrants still waiting to be processed behind us here in Eagle Pass. Greg Abbott says the law is necessary to slow the number of migrants crossing into Texas.
Now, how can anybody see these swarms and hordes of people crossing illegally and then traveling throughout the country and potentially even crossing to, say, Canada, and say that they don't understand what Donald Trump is saying by poisoning the country? I'm not a huge Trump guy. Obviously, I'm Canadian. I have no skin in the game in terms of the election or whatever for next year. But if I was picking Biden or Trump, just based off the numbers alone and the policies and how well Trump's numbers were, as I've shown in previous videos too, yeah, it makes sense. And again, this is not to say legal immigration isn't great. I'm fully for that. If people want to go through the correct channels to get to the US, to Canada, to wherever they're migrating to or immigrating to, yeah, all for it. But when you have swaths like this, where again, it's not just Venezuelans or Hispanics, you have African, you have Middle Eastern people, you have Chinese people, like all of these people that are coming across should be going through the proper channels, not just flooding the border and getting processed in and then getting sent to these sanctuary cities where all of them are now struggling and drowning with all this debt and financial aid. And they're going after, Biden saying the federal government should be doing this and they're not helping us, yada, 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 yada. Yeah, address the problem. And again, this isn't only a US thing. You just saw in the Netherlands, they voted in this Dutch guy who's anti-immigration. In the UK, they've had an influx of violent crime due to immigrants. I believe there was an Algerian man who stabbed a bunch of children. Even in Poland, they just finished having, I believe, an election or a vote on this process and questioning people on, what do they think about illegal immigration.
You're against illegal immigration?
Who is not?
Poland is at a political crossroads.
If we're accepting someone from outside at the cost of our basis, cultural basis, this is disaster.
So you see all these things, you see all these videos, you see what they're talking about, how it leads to increase in violence, in danger. You have no documentation of who these people are, or what their pasts were, stuff like that. That will cause a poisoning of the country. It's not the same as what Adolf was saying about mixing blood and ruining an Aryan race. That's not what Trump is trying to get across. He's trying to emphasize that there is a crisis that's happening at the border that will affect the country. And obviously, you're going to have people who are here actually trying to seek a better life. But then you're going to have terroristic people or people who are very violent. Again, you have no background check. But again, the media just harps on that one line that he said. And it's like, well, you're not addressing the actual issue of why he's saying what he said.
Before I let you go, I do want to get your reaction to something that former President Trump said overnight. He was in New Hampshire. He was talking about the need to keep immigrants out of this country. Here's what he said. I'll get your response. The Biden campaign has accused former President Trump of, quote, parroting Adolf Hitler. What is your reaction? Are the president's comments representative of how you and other Republicans feel?
76% of the American people, not Donald Trump, believe the border is broken. They're worried about fentanyl coming over and killing their kids.
But what about his language, Senator?
Well,
just that language, that poisoning the blood.
I'm worried about an outcome. He is right to want. He had the border secured, the lowest in 40 years in December of 2020. To the Biden administration, you're talking about Donald Trump's language, as you said on the sidelines, and allowed the country to be invaded. 172 people on the terrorist watch list have come on your watch. Fentanyl is killing more Americans than any time in history.
Just on the language, though, I want to get your response. You have endorsed former President Trump. Are you comfortable with him using words like that?
We're talking about language. I could care less what language people use as long as we get it right. I believe in legal immigration. I have no animosity toward people trying to come to our country. I have animosity against terrorists and against drug dealers, but I understand why people want to come to America. But we have chaos and we need to create order. If you think you're going to win the debate on illegal immigration by picking a line out of the Trump speech, most Americans understand the game has to change, that we're under threat, that we're going to get attacked, that our border has completely been obliterated. So if you're talking about the language Trump uses rather than trying to fix it, that's a losing strategy for the Biden administration.
Do you think he would appeal to more people, though, if he chose different words on that argument?
You know, I think the president has a way of talking sometimes I disagree with, but he actually delivered on the border. People are looking for results. If the only thing you want to talk about on immigration is the way Donald Trump talks, you're missing a lot.
Just finally, is it the position of the Republican Party that African and Asian immigrants are poisoning the blood of the people in this country?
No, it's the position of the Republican Party that we've lost control of the border, that terrorists are coming, that there's never been a higher threat to the United States from a terrorist attack from a broken border. But immigrants, people coming to America, we are many people coming to be one. We've lost control of our border. There are people coming here who are selling drugs. There are people coming here in murder, and there are people coming here trying to have a better life.
There's a crisis that needs to be addressed. Everybody's feeling it, or they will be soon enough. But again, this is just my opinion. Love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this? And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.